Hello and welcome to day 15 of 30 Days of Spectre. We are halfway there. Whoa, as Bon Jovi would say. We're halfway there.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, very nice. And today we are going to be talking about the journey to Blofeld's Lair. I'm Tom Sears and I'm joined by my good buddy Chris Wright. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
Good stuff. Now, in terms of kind of how we're structuring these episodes, basically what we did is we wanted to do an episode that kind of covered each character. So obviously, you know, we've done episodes on all the main characters so far, with the exception of Denby. We've had a few people say, "Oh, where's Denby's episode?" But we kind of covered all the Denby stuff in the M episode because they pretty much share every scene. So when we were talking about M, Denby was involved, so it didn't see much point in doing a Denby episode. But we like Denby, just in case you were wondering. He's all right. We like him. So what we're going to do now is kind of go through sort of piece by piece from the kind of the last third of the film, which some might say is the most troublesome part of the film, Chris. So there is much discussion to be had over the next few days of the 30 Days of Spectre. So what we're going to do is, obviously the last episode was all about the kind of Austria plane chase, car chase kind of thing. We're skipping forward. We've already talked about the train fight in the Hinks episode and all that kind of stuff. So this picks up where they get off the train in the middle of the desert, and they get picked up by the Rolls Royce. So how are you feeling about this, Chris?
I'm looking forward to it, actually. I think there's there's a lot to be said about what's going on. I've heard similar things about people being a bit negative towards certain aspects of this. So it'd be nice to have a sort of different look at different perspectives on it and see what we come up with. Before we go into that, I just want to go over a question which I asked you in about 4 or 5 podcasts ago. And this time I'd like an answer, please.
Oh, all right. He's getting demanding. Jesus Christ.
So my question was, if you could only watch one set of Bond films with one actor, what would it be? And I'd like your running from, you know, if you could only watch one, what would it be? If they weren't available, you could only watch another, what would it be? If they weren't available, and so on. Because I've worked out what mine would be now.
Right. Okay. This is very tough for me because my all-time favourite Bond film is On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
What a film.
And that would mean I would only be able to take that one film. And maybe the argument would be there for, well, if you're going to take one film, take the best one, you know? Yeah. So there is that. However, there's a lot of other classics that would also come hand in hand with other classics. So, for example, I could take Sean with me, and I've got Dr. No Through the Diamonds, and there's some amazing stuff in there. Even though Majesty's is my favourite, I mean, that there's some great stuff in there. I could take all of Pierce's, for example. I wouldn't want to take all of Pierce's. I'd take 3 of them. I could take all of Rogers, which are amazing. I could take, you know, well, again, the thing with Timmy, bless him, is he's only got 2 films, so it doesn't make sense to take Timmy or George, because you're just getting less bang for your buck. And then, of course, we've got Daniel as well. I think I would have to say, purely based on the fact that he was so good, I would have to take Connery with me. Because I get 6 films, or 7 if I'm allowed to take Never Say Never again as well. I'm allowed to take Never Say Never.
You can.
I'll have that. Yeah. And that's good, because that's a Bond film I have definitely watched less than the others, so there's more to discover there. So I would take Sean with me. Second up, I think I would take Daniel with me, because at the moment I get 4 films, Casino being like my second favourite by millimetres behind Majesty's, and I also get that amazing opening sequence from Spectre, and I get the beautiful Olga Korolenko to look at as well, and the beautiful Berenice Marlowe. So that would be my second choice. Third, I can't do it. I can't.
Yeah, you're doing it. You're doing well. Come on, Tom.
But then when it gets, the middle ones are the hardest ones, because there are some clear favourites. But when you get into the middle ranges, that's where I'm just like, like, I don't know what my life would be like without Roger Moore in it. Like, not being able to see him do his little nod and wink in For Your Eyes Only out of the Citroen would pain me so much.
What about Live and Let Die?
and Live and Let Die is such a brilliant film. I love that so much. And just Roger in general, I imagine if I'm on a desert island, I'm going to have some off days because, I'm on my own in the middle of nowhere, and Roger would probably make me the happiest out of all the Bonds. So it would make sense to take Roger with me. Then I love Pierce, and I love him so much. And a GoldenEye is a masterpiece of a Bond film. But then, am I allowed to throw Die Another Day in the Sea? Or
you can take it with you. You're not forced to watch it. Okay. You'll have them with you.
That would be a game changer. If I was forced to watch it, then that would be Pierce out of the game.
No, you can do with it what you want.
And Sophie Marceau is so breathtakingly beautiful. At the moment, it's a tie between Pierce and Roger. I don't know what to say. It really is for me. I can't give you that answer. Ask me again next week, and I'll see where I am with that. I've given you my first two.
Okay, so we'll do the middle two, and can you do the last two now in order, or should we stick?
Podcast? Do you know what? I'll happily say that, and I know I'm going to piss a lot of people off. There is some very hardcore fans, and I have to say, as much as it pains me, Timothy is my least favourite Bond. He really is. And I know, Steve Batchelor, he's going to be going apeshit in his earphones right now. I know that much. And I know some people love Timmy, and I love Timmy. I love him. But if I have to line them up, the other guys just do it for me more than Timmy does, Like I mean, look, I went to all the Living Daylights locations, and I loved it. And I love Living Daylights, and I love License to Kill. But for me, Timmy is like the last Bond I would put on compared to the others.
So this is very much an evil question. This is like if Blofeld was questioning Bond about his favourite subject. This is the sort of question.
It's Sophie's choice, man. It is. It's like two of your daughters are hanging off a cliff, and which one do you save? It really is. It pains me to say that about Timothy, but I've just got to be honest about it. God, people are switching off in their droves right now after that comment, I'm sure.
I know. Yeah. Well, there we go. So we've got the first two, the last two, and we'll find out the middle two in a future podcast, yeah?
All right, go on then. So what about you?
Okay. Do you want the full rundown or not?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. My first would definitely be, I thought long and hard about it, and it has to be Sean. It has to be Sean. Yeah. Like you said, you got the 7 films. I'm a massive, the first 4 are immense. We always say that, but I'm a big fan of From Russia, huge fan of From Russia.
Yeah.
And I love them all really. Thunderball, Goldfinger, Dr. No is great. I love them all. So yeah, Sean would be first. Now second was a hard one for me. Again, it was Roger and Daniel, but I actually went for Roger second because I thought, well, you're getting 7 films.
Yeah.
I love Octopussy. I love Spy Love Me. I love Live and Let Die. I'm fond of Moonraker. I'm fond of them all actually. I really like A View to a Kill as well. But you get a vast range of sort of, you get your, like I said before, you get your humour, your fantasy, you get your bit of serious, you get your voodoo, so you get a vast range of stuff. So Roger would be my second. Third would be Daniel, because Casino Royale is epic. It's such an amazing film. And Spectre I love. Quantum has gone right up for me. In fact, I will admit this now, my Daniel's 4 films are the same as yours in terms of I put Casino first.
Really? Okay.
I put Spectre second, I put Quantum third, and I put Skyfall fourth. And I assume that's what the one.
That's precisely my order. Yeah.
Which is strange. So that's exactly what my Daniels would be. So Daniel would be third. Now fourth for me would be George. Did you even mention George? No, George's in your bottom 2. Fourth for me would be George. I'd put George above Tim or Pierce. One film. I love that film. So that would be fourth. Okay. So I'm down to Tim and Pierce. I'd actually go for Tim over Pierce.
Really?
Tim would be my fifth. I love Living Daylights and License to Kill, most of it. And Pierce, I like 2 of his films. 2 of them I'm not too keen on. But overall I'd take Tim. So I'd go Sean, Roger, Daniel, George, Tim, and Pierce. And it is bloody hard to say that. And same as you. It's like they're all your kids. You love them all, and different times. But you've got different factors like the amount of films and the range of films and stuff. So it is tricky.
That is the thing, man. if you said what's the one Bond film you would take, it would be Majesty's.
Majesty's, yeah,
every time.
Same here.
But
Same
what
here,
I'm
definitely.
judging this on is I'm on a desert island, and I have to think long term about the amount of entertainment I've got, and you can only watch one film once. Well, you can watch it 100 times over, but it's just one film. Whereas if you've got Connery, you've got 7 films, or Roger, you've got 7 films, and then your range of entertainment is a lot broader. That is a tough question, man. I don't. Yeah, I feel drained. I think we should end this episode immediately because I don't know where I'm going to find the energy to talk about Spectre.
Sorry, man. Sorry, but we've got the middle two to find out in the future, so that'll be interesting. So
absolutely.
There we go. And again, like with the JBR listeners, it'd be great to see what order you'd put them in, because it's a bloody hard thing to do.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of people said they couldn't do it, and it's paining to do it. But the thing is, we say this now. Give it a year or two. Obviously, if Daniel brings out 2 or 3 more films, that might change Daniel's.
And let's face it, we haven't gone through the Timmy Pierce period in a long time, because we made a vow that we wouldn't watch those films until the podcast time comes along to review it. So, you might watch. Heaven forbid, we might watch Die Another Day and be like, do you know what? It wasn't actually that bad.
Yep. Maybe. No, I think it'll be all right. And also the fact that, opinions change over time anyway. So what might be number 1 or number 2 or number 3 now might be 4, 5 or 6 in a year or two. So that's just what happens.
Absolutely.
So interesting, but difficult. So there we go. Should we do a bit of journey to Blofeld's Lair?
Well, let's do it. So to begin, they've just got off the train. They're in that little station in the middle of nowhere. Bond says it might be a long wait. They sit there for a bit, and then we see a 1948 Rolls-Royce Silver Wraith approaching in the distance. Now, is there any significance to that car, Chris? Tell me.
There is. Well, first of all, I think the scene's a bit of a homage to Lawrence of Arabia, which is quite nice, because there's a scene, a very similar sort of setting in that, and I'm sure they did that. And also they did the Lawrence of Arabia music in Spy, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
So I think this is another sort of nod to Lawrence of Arabia, and perhaps the nod to the nod in Spy, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, so the Rolls-Royce Silver Wraith, yes, definitely. I think we mentioned this on one of the other podcasts, but it is the same Rolls that Kirin Bay has in From Russia with Love. I think the one in this one is, did he say 1948, the one in Spectre? And I think the one in... And I think the one in From Russia was 1958 or something like that. I think it, but looked the same pretty much. So that was definitely a nod to From Russia. And I think also M had one in Dr. No in the novel, I think, but I'm not entirely sure.
Do you know what I've just done, Chris?
What?
I've just looked at this and I've thought to myself, hang about, we've got something in this that we could use as a future Bond title. Now, the word Wraith, is very much like a Spectre, right? It's basically another word for that. And silver is a Bondian word, not unlike gold, with a similar meaning. So imagine if they brought out a Bond film called Silver Wraith. That kind of actually has a little bit of a ring to it. Now, it doesn't sound like a Bond film. If they said the next film is called Silver Wraith, I'd be like, but I feel like there's some quality in those words that could perhaps be weaved into a longer title somewhere. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I like Wraith. Yeah, I think Wraith possibly could. And Silver is quite a cool one as well. Maybe it's Silver with an A and he comes back from the dead.
Yeah. Oh, Silver's Wraith. He's come back, haunting Bond, with his dodgy teeth,
No, I think it's cool. I think it's a good thing to always keep a lookout for potential Bond titles and stuff like that. I know, like the one we mentioned in the other podcast, I'm a big fan of that. And I think I'm going to try and keep a lookout now for future Bond titles. And I think between us, if we can just spot ones randomly, it'll be interesting. But I think those are definitely Bondian type words, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
Absolutely. So they get in the Rolls and off they go. And there's a little bit when doesn't she say she's scared in the back of the car? Am I remembering that right? And he kind of holds her hand.
That's right.
Which this was very much like a nod to Dr. No in itself, isn't it? Where Honey Rider says that to Bond, and there's that little exchange. And this whole sequence just stinks of Dr. No in a good way. And obviously, you only live twice. As you see them approaching this kind of huge, not unlike a hollowed out volcano crater. Now, I must admit, man, when the crew were scouting for locations and they came across that bad boy, they must have been like, stop everything, like this is absolutely perfect, like this is just, they must have had a field day that day, being like, how they just stumble across this massive thing that looks like it was built for it, how incredible.
Well, I remember when we watched it in the Royal Albert Hall and we saw the shot of the Rolls tracking towards it, and it just sort of panned up and we see this big crater, and I just remember all three of us kind of going, oh my God, this is it, look at it. And it was so good. And I think it's a cracking location. I love it. I think the idea behind it is great. I think the nod to You Only Live Twice is brilliant as well. I'm a big fan of this sort of base, Spectre base.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So basically, as they arrive, it's like, this is classic Bond style, where they're not going to be thrown in shackles and in a dungeon somewhere. It's like, you're going to join the villain for dinner later, which I think is great. Do you want some champagne and all that kind of business, which is classic Bond. So they rock up. He has to give his gun to the guy on the silver platter. Offers him the champagne, and I think, and is it at that point where they offer him the champagne? He says later, is that?
I think that's after the room, the champagne. This one is just the bit where he's holding the platter in it, and Bond's like, "Oh, okay," and then gives him the gun. But the champagne and the guns from Live and Let Die, so it's definitely a nod to that.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And then
that's a quick question. Did you? I tried to look. When Bond hands the gun, and basically it's the leather holster.
Yeah,
and it's got a sign, an emblem on sort of a black. There's like a black circle on the holster, and it's got like an emblem on it. And I couldn't quite make it out. I don't know if it's MI6 or if it's the make, whether it's Walther, like an emblem of Walther, or what it is. And I'll have to have a look, because there's some sort of brand on there or some sort of.
What's interesting about that is it's a hip holster, isn't it? It clips on your belt rather than the traditional shoulder holster. Yeah. So that was an interesting difference. Yeah, but yeah, obviously they get shown to their rooms, very Dr. No-like. They've got their separate kind of rooms they go in. Obviously, he's got the photo of Bond and the Oberhausers as kids and stuff, and she's got stuff in her room as well with the Honey Rider dress. Man, as soon as she puts that on, it's just like the dress from Dr. No that she puts on when they're held captive at the end there. She sees the photo of her with Mr. White in her room and all that kind of stuff. So how do you feel about that little sequence? Do you like that?
I loved it straight away. I just was grinning like hugely. I love the fact when the car first rolls in, you see sort of the manicured lawn with the sprinklers, and you're in the middle of the desert, but you've got this lovely sort of oasis almost of luxury. But yeah, so they go to the room straight away. You're thinking Dr. No, the dress and everything. I like the fact that Oberhauser's got these photos, and he's basically telling them, look, I know everything. Everything. And it's a power play move, isn't it? It's like it's almost sort of making them not fearful, well, maybe fearful, but at least intimidated, shall we say, by what this man knows and what he's capable of. And I like the fact they're, obviously they're in their room with the guard outside, and they can view the whole facility, because obviously in Dr. No, they're underground, so their rooms, I can't really see anything. Here, they've got a view of what's going on, and I think that's quite cool. Yeah. So I think that whole idea is brilliant. Yeah, I really like it. And then after that is a point where they come outside, and then that's when they're offered the champagne.
Absolutely.
And Bond sort of is about to take it, and then thinks, maybe later.
Yeah.
As we mentioned before, maybe he just wanted to have his wits about him, or maybe it could have been drugged, or there could have been anything. So it's best to play it safe. Now, did Madeline take one or not?
I don't think either of them did, to be honest with you, if I remember correctly. But yeah. Now this next little sequence, they go into the meteorite room. Now, oh man, this for me is like your classic Bond villain introduction, megalomaniac speech section. I love the layout of that room, just bathed in darkness, and there's a meteorite in the middle. And then I just love the way that Blofeld just kind of like looms up out of the darkness, takes one step forward, and you just see him sort of framed in shadow there. I really love that. And there's the whole speech about the meteor, out there on its own for years and years, gathering momentum until it unleashes its force upon the earth as a metaphor for Spectre itself. I think that's a brilliant little opening speech there. What do you think?
I love it. I like kind of spacey stuff, and I just love that whole idea of the meteor, the crater, the parallel with Spectre. I love the fact as well that the room is sort of, it's got those steps, and it's almost like quite, the way they sort of go down into the center. It's almost like that's a mini crater, isn't it? Yeah. It's almost like the meteor being in the middle is like the crater of that room, and it's also quite space-like in terms of you've got the orbit, I guess, of the meteor, even though it's not ellipses, the circles, but it's still got a space vibe to it, hasn't it? With it dark, and obviously the meteorite's lit up. So the more I watch that scene, the more I think, the more I'm amazed by it, the more I love it so much. I love the fact he's in the shadows. I love that bit. Go on, touch it if you like.
Touch it.
And that sort of whole thing is like really creepy, but really cool as well. Yeah. And then obviously the way that he sort of comes into the light, and as we mentioned before, like no socks, and he's wearing the Nehru jacket with just the one button kind of done up with the shirt underneath, and it just gives off that sort of bit of a mental vibe in terms of the way that he's so sort of, you can know he's about to take pleasure. He knows what's about to come. He knows what is in store for Bond.
Yeah.
And he's expressing his joy through his excitement, his features. You can tell he's sort of just, it's, like I said before, I guess it's his Christmas come, isn't it? He's got Bond where he wants him. And I love that bit. And I just overall, I think it was a great sort of intro to Blofeld. Obviously, we saw him in the Spectre meeting, but for Bond to see him, I think it was a great way that it was done. Really.
Yeah, I really like that. The obvious comparison is Silver's introduction as he comes down and walks along that huge long corridor, big one long shot, the big speech about the rats and stuff. It's his version of that, which is great. And I think the thing with Christoph Waltz is, like, when you watch him in Inglourious Bastards, and apparently something I've learned, that line earlier on, or in this bit, when he says, "I came to visit your father when you were young," is apparently a nod to Inglourious Bastards, because in the scene, if you remember, it's a long time since I've seen it, where he goes and visits to see if he's been hiding any Jews, and then she's the daughter in that scene, which I didn't realise. I'd forgotten that. So I think that's a reference, from what I've been told, is a reference to Inglourious Bastards, which is quite funny.
Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, I love the fact that for me, Christoph Waltz is the only man who can make an evil, despicable Nazi quite likable. And when I saw Inglourious Bastards, I was like, I like this guy, even though he's a nasty, stinky Nazi. And I think that quality he has of just being an absolute lunatic, but being quite a small man at the same time, is really unsettling, I think. And this whole thing of the surveillance and him watching and always being one step ahead and knowing everything is really unsettling. And I think that's personified by the fact that, we see him in shadow in the meeting room. He knows precisely where Bond is on that balcony when he looks up and makes eye contact. And there's this scene, they come in, they're like, why is there a massive egg in the middle of the room? And then he just kind of looms out of the darkness. I think that all of that adds together just to show like what a sneaky, voyeuristic bastard he is at the end of the day. Bastard spelt with an E.
With an E, exactly, yeah. I think there's another good bit where he's sort of talking to Madeleine Swann about, obviously, like, he knew her father and he remembered coming to see her when she was a little girl, and the whole, I don't remember that, well, I do, which is really nice and creepy. Now, JB, our listener, Olof Sphere, who was on our left...
I hope that was pronounced correctly, Chris. That's a name and a half. Yeah, go on, carry on. Sorry.
He's on left a message on the website and made an interesting comment about how, remember early on in the film, Madeleine mentioned that... a man came to kill her father when she was young, but the man didn't know that the father kept a Beretta under the sink next to the bleach, ensuring that she was the one that killed the guy who was trying to kill her dad. Obviously, and that's why she hates guns, even though she knows what they're about. Yeah. Now, Olof made an interesting point and said, do you think that has anything to do with the point where Blofeld says to her, I came to your house once and I saw you? And he said, are those two events linked? Now, initially, you sort of think about it, you're like, well, she killed whoever was in the house, so obviously it's a different time. Yeah. But what if Blofeld had sent one of his minions or one of his dudes to take care of Mr. White, but wanted to watch for himself? So Blofeld was outside in the shadows watching whoever it might be, talking to Mr. White and about to kill him. But then Madeline comes down with the Beretta and takes the sort of assassin out, and Blofeld sees the whole thing. That could potentially be one and the same scene. If you do
guess
it that way.
So, but at the same time, we know Mr. White's been working with Spectre as recently as Quantum. So I guess why would he do that and then just let him go back to work for him?
Well, that was exactly what I had in mind when I thought about it. But maybe when they were setting Spectre up, because Mr. White, I think, is definitely the potential number two. Perhaps there was a time where both he and Blofeld were level, and like they're about to do this thing. And I think that was Blofeld's chance to like get rid of him, and no one else, he will never be around. But maybe the fact that he was saved, Blofeld's kind of like let him live in a way. But initially I think that's probably too much into it. But it's another potential little link. If you want one, it's there. If you don't, it's not there.
You can leave it. Yeah, absolutely.
You can do what you want with it. Yeah. It's just it's quite a cool sort of interesting sort of point, I thought.
Now, something else you mentioned, Chris, is that sort of scene where they're walking to the main nerve center room.
That's it.
You mentioned how Blofeld's base almost looks like Drax's space station, but on the ground. Doesn't it?
Yeah, no,
and
definitely.
I see those kind of like the interlinking corridors definitely give that sort of impression, don't they?
Yeah, I got that even on the first viewing. It's because they've all got, so they're square instead of circular, but they've all got windows and in Moonraker, obviously you can see from the outside, you can see people walking through those tubes, you see Bond and Jaws walking through and what have you. And just the sight of them walking through these sort of cubes with the windows to a nerve center, almost like the center of Drax's space station. That's kind of like the vibe that I got from it. So I think that's probably a little nod there. But,
absolutely. Cool. So what we have here, Chris, is the first glimpse of a classic old school Bond villain Lair on the inside. Now what we have is a bank of computer monitors and screens everywhere.
Yep.
We have minions all dressed in matching uniforms. I'd love it if they were racking out the little yellow ones. All in matching uniforms, and we have Blofeld standing there with his Nehru jacket on, unleashing his plan upon Bond. And Bond doing his little thing that he likes to do, which pleases me every time he does it, where Blofeld's explaining, the whole thing about the mass surveillance, and Bond's just basically belittling him and saying he's nothing, a bit of a voyeur, aren't you?
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. I love all that kind of business. We haven't had a scene like that in a long time.
That reminds me quite a lot of Goldeneye to Trevelyan when he's like, you're nothing more than a petty thief, a bank robber sort of thing. And it's that same sort of line, isn't it, that he's using. But when we very first go into this scene in this location, when I first saw the film, initially I thought, that's not much. It's just a sort of a corridor type thing. And I was a bit underwhelmed. But then as soon as I saw like all these sort of guys or girls or whoever they might be dressed in black at the computers, and I thought, so it's not just one corridor, it's like there was like a star shape, so there's like 4 corridors off the main sort of center bit. But also I love the bit, it happens a little bit later in the scene, where suddenly the lights go off and they all just stand up. And that's like intimidating as fuck. If you're like Bond, suddenly all these people are just looking at you and they're shadows and you don't know them. And it's like they're always saying, this work is within the shadows and stuff like this. And here are like dozens of shadows just staring at you. And like, I love that bit. I also thought that in this scene, Blofeld's very much like Elliot, my good pal, Jonathan Pryce. Very much like Elliot Carver. Because if you remember, Elliot Carver, he had a tablet sort of type device or keypad that used to tap to bring up the screens and change and stuff, which obviously Blofeld has. And he had sort of a Nehru style jacket. So he kind of had a bit of a Blofeld vibe going on, I thought. That's Elliot Carver, which brought that. But the scene I really liked. Obviously, he shows the live link supposedly to M, telling the others, that basically, the 00 or MI6 is disbanded or what have you, and stuff like that. And then they carry on and talking about all the surveillance and stuff, and they get to the sort of centre bit, don't they? And he's just talking about how Bond basically says, your plans, it's not complex, there's nothing genius behind it. It's basically, you're just like making loads of bombs everywhere in the world, letting them off. And so people want better security. And you're saying, well, hang on a minute, let's all join security forces and this will stop. And then you'll have access to everyone's security. It's not like rocket science, which I thought was kind of cool, just like dumbing down the villain's plan, which is a nice way of doing it, I think. Because otherwise Blofeld would have been, blowing it up out of all proportion. But I was like, well, no, all you're doing is like causing a little bit of terrorism and then trying to get everyone to sign up to this security thing, which I thought was kind of cool.
That. So I suppose because there's the whole thing about the Cape Town bombing, which kind of ties in with the fact that South Africa are the only ones who haven't agreed to the mass surveillance thing. So that's the terrorism in the T in Spectre.
Oh, yes, I didn't think of that. That's really good. Yeah.
So there's that whole thing of Blofeld has that nice speech about how from terrible things, wonderful things can like blossom and all that kind of stuff. And Bond, he's talking about being a visionary, and Bond says psychiatric wards are full of them and all that kind of stuff. Which is a throwback to what scene, Chris?
So obviously, this is Dr. No in the Lair, where Bond basically goes to Dr. No says our asylums are full of people who believe they're Napoleon or God or something like that. Yeah. And Dr. No's obviously just sort of mentioned about his plan, and Bond's like, well, you're basically a nutter, mate. That's what you are. You're a bloody nutter. And that's what he tells him.
Absolutely.
In so many words. Yeah.
In that voice too. Connery says, doesn't he? He's like, our asylums are full of people who think they're Napoleon or God. And then so this is a little throwback to that, which is nice. Yeah, he was also fond of a bit of Nehru, wasn't he, old Dr. No?
That's right, yeah. So if you want to be a supervillain, you got to buy a Nehru jacket. So I might invest in one for sure.
Very nice, cool stuff. So this features another kind of one of those moments that a lot of people I feel is very misunderstood. We've talked about this before, where Blofeld says, I'm the author of all your pain. And there seems to be a common misconception that Blofeld went on to set up Spectre purely to piss off Bond, and that's its whole sole purpose, which is absolutely wrong. Like, if you listen to this speech, basically Blofeld says it's all in this scene. That whole sort of backstory thing is all in this section, and Blofeld says, basically, you meddled in my affairs, so I had my revenge, and that's why all the women in your life that you love ended up dead, because Bond stumbles across his plan in Casino without realizing it. So Vesper ends up dead. Same in Quantum, same in Skyfall. M ends up dead, and that's what it is. It's Bond, in a sense, has been the initial aggressor, and this is sort of Blofeld's revenge. It's not absolutely in any way. Spectre is purely there to piss off Bond, and that's what his whole business is, because it's a functioning business in a sense that they got all these business interests across the world. They got all these plans of the mass surveillance, all the prostitutes, the counterfeit pharmaceuticals, and all that kind of stuff. It is a fully functioning beast that Bond happens to stumble across, and he gives Bond a spank every time, or one of Bond's lovers a spank every time that's happened so far, and this is the first time they've come face to face. So I feel like that's an important thing. So if that is what you're thinking, then watch the film again and pay special attention in this sequence, because that's where that is all summed up.
There is another way of looking at it from that point of view, in terms of what about if people are thinking, if they're not saying, because a lot of people did say that, and I don't agree with that at all. I think obviously Spectre would be going on if Bond was there or not. It just so happened, like you said, that he came across it. But I think what some people are saying is that Blofeld's neurosis, the fact that he's become the man he is, was purely because Bond rocked up for a couple of months over 2 years, and Daddy didn't pay him any attention. He paid it all to Bond, and because of that, that's what's turned him into this nutter. And I think from that point of view, you can understand how some people might think, well, that's a bit much. Now, whether that's the complete reason, because obviously he was affected by it, but was if Bond wasn't there over those 2 winters, would he have ended up being the sort of maniac he is? Or what do you think?
I feel like he was a born psycho. he's going to be a mental person. If you're capable of killing your own dad out of something like that, then he's going to be a lunatic no matter what happens. And I feel like it would have just been a matter of time for some kind of trigger to set him off. And, you know, he'd have probably killed his dad at some point, wherever. And it just so happened that trigger in this time was Bond. I don't think that whole thing, a popular thing is that storyline reduces Blofeld to like a sniveling little teenager with daddy issues. I don't think it does. I really don't. I can see why you might think that, but I don't think it does. The way I see it, Blofeld is a megalomaniac psycho villain with he's a mastermind, basically, freakishly intelligent, and that he was always going to be a nutter. And it just so happened that Bond stumbles into his life during their childhood, and you know, that's one of the things that triggered off.
Yeah, no, 100% I agree with that. I think if Bond hadn't been in his life, you know, he would have made something similar to Spectre. He would have, you know, he wouldn't have been good for the world.
Yeah.
The fact that maybe his dad wasn't keen on him was maybe a bit weird as a child. Who knows, you know? I think the fact that Bond was there might have fueled the hatred towards his dad and everything like that. And obviously, you know, his hatred towards Bond, but that I don't think that was the thing that made him think, oh, I know, I'm going to now take over the world because this boy my dad's gone skiing with him and not me. I think that's a bit of bollocks, really. Yeah. I think he was always going to be a nutter, and obviously he you know, set up Spectre, and then Bond, like you said, sort of happened across his. Okay, you can say, oh, that's a bit of a coincidence, but you know, it's a small thing, really. And Bond happened across, you know, Casino Royale, like you said, and obviously got involved unintentionally, and that's why what happened has happened.
Yeah.
Now, here's an interesting thing. So, you mentioned obviously just now Spectre, all these terrorism acts that they're doing around the world for the surveillance. So if we look at the surveillance side of things, what that is to gain intelligence from other securities and basically counteract that.
Yeah.
So we know what Spectre is. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's it's a special executive for counterintelligence, which is that. We've mentioned the terrorism. Now, could Bond 25 be called revenge and extortion?
Oh, good point. Yeah, that is a good point. It's funny that wasn't used, the whole acronym thing, isn't it, of what Spectre stands for in this film. Maybe that's something that will come out next time, but that is a good point. Yeah. So
and because obviously Blofeld's been captured, so what would his revenge be for that once he gets free or escapes?
Now we both have some very solid ideas about what's coming next, but that gets his own episode, so we'll nip that one in the bud before it goes too far down that one. But I think anyone who knows anything about Bond will probably be thinking along the same lines as us, basically. So I suppose a key thing that happens next is when he tries to show Madeline the video of Bond and Mr. White. Initially, I thought they were going to have doctored the video to make it look like Bond had shot Mr. White.
Ooh, that would have been interesting
into my mind, but obviously not. Now, I feel like that bit where Bond's like, "Don't look at it, look at me," kind of thing, and she sort of tears her eyes away. I think that is the moment that makes her fall in love with him, basically, because if you look at their history so far during the film, she's not happy with him when they meet because, you know, he's led these people to her, even though he's essentially rescued her. There's the train fight, obviously, where she kind of rescues him. And then obviously he rescues her at the end of the film. But at this point, I feel like they've been through enough together to have a super highly charged relationship. And I feel like that moment whereby they're in the villain's lair, surrounded by minions, surrounded by Blofeld, he's showing her this horrible video that she doesn't want to see. And I feel like that moment when they lock eyes is the moment where that kind of happens for the first time, I think. Even though they've obviously already done the business on the train. Yeah. Maybe that's where it happened, really, because Bond is an expert lover, let's face it. But I feel like on an emotional level, that's where it happens.
That's brilliant. That's amazing. I completely agree with that, and that makes sense as well. You know, everyone's saying, "Oh, you know, it's rushed. They couldn't love each other and all this." Like we said, they're not like you and I, people. You know, normal people. You know, they look at everything they've been through. Like you said, the highly charged stuff, almost dying, saving one another, having an understanding of the life of an assassin and what effect that has. And obviously, this point, him saving her from seeing her dad shooting himself. That's a huge thing. And as they look at each other, you can sort of say, and you can see that. And when she sort of winces or reacts to the sound of the gunshot, Bond's kind of, you know, you can just see it in their eyes. I think you can read so much into their eyes. And I think that's, I completely agree. I think that's a great bit. And I think that is the bit where, from that point on, she would probably, they'd happily do anything for each other. Pretty much, I'd say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So at this point, after the kind of the gunshot kind of goes down, and they've had that little moment together. Obviously, one of Blofeld's minions comes up behind Bond, twats him around the back of the head, and it's blackout time for Bond.
So what do you think about that then, Bond being knocked out like that? Because, some films you see people, like Oddjob and Goldfinger, chop the back of the neck, gets knocked out. Some people, it happens quite a lot. Goldfinger, again, pre-titles, kicks that guy after he jumps over the wall and he sort of gets knocked out. Some people have issues with people getting knocked out too easily, but I think a whack around the head like that is pretty substantial enough to knock one out for a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, he's out cold, that's for sure. Which is where we are going to leave today's episode. Mm-hmm. We will be back tomorrow to discuss the kind of the next segment of the film. But as a kind of setup for the classic Bond villain Lair, how would you feel this goes, Chris? How do you feel about it?
You know what? I've absolutely missed having a Bond villain Lair. Okay, so looking back, obviously you had the sort of Skyfall. They didn't really have one because it wasn't a villain's lair. Quantum, they had I did like the sort of hotel type place in the desert. I thought that was a decent enough lair. Casino, there wasn't really one. Die in the Day, we don't care about. The World Is Not Enough, didn't really have one. Tomorrow Never Dies, the ship, that wasn't really one. I guess the last proper one was GoldenEye with the underground base in Cuba, which was decent enough. But this one, the classic elements, the sunken crater type thing, brilliant. I love the idea of it. I love the whole meteorite thing. I love the sort of web of the actual facility, almost like a spider web perhaps, or something like that, the Moonraker type thing. So all in all, I'm a big fan of this as a sort of villain space. I love the setup so far from what we've got, and I love the Blofeld intro in that meteorite scene, and the fact that he shows his hands with all the surveillance stuff. I think is great, and then that thing between Bond and Madeline with the video clip, I think is brilliant as well. So absolutely, I'm really happy with all that bit.
Yeah, me too. I think that location, it's incredible that they found that, and that it was just made to be a Bond lair. Absolutely. But yeah, I'm sure. Like I say, when the location scout stumbled across that must have been a happy day for them. It was like.
How cool, sorry man, I just got to say, how cool a job would that be, being a location scout for Bond? So you get the script, you're like, right, we've got to find a desert, sort of sunken crater in the desert. Right, let's go off. Here's, get these flights, get these helicopters, or whatever you need, go find this. That would be so bloody good.
That would be a good job.
Just to scout Bond locations around the world. It gets trickier and trickier, obviously, but there are certain places he hasn't been, and you've got to find what matches the script as close as you can. But that would be an awesome job.
Without doubt. So that about rounds out today's episode. If you haven't already, make sure you come join us on Facebook and Twitter, and come to the JamesBondRadio.com website and join in on the comments and all that kind of business. Subscribe on YouTube, and come and leave us a lovely glowing 5-star review on iTunes, because that really helps us too. Make sure you get involved in that, because if you haven't joined the JBR family yet, on the social media platforms we have on offer, you are seriously missing out, because what happens is you get to enjoy the JBR experience on the podcast. But then what happens is, when you join the JBR family in a social media context, it takes things to a whole nother level, doesn't it, Chris?
It certainly does. You get involved with discussions about every single aspect of Bond. And if there's something that we haven't talked about, throw it out there. Get people talking. That's what we love to see, is just anything Bond related that gets a discussion, you're going to find people with polarizing opinions no matter what the debate is, no matter what the question is. Everyone's got their say, everyone has got their pros and their cons, and it's fantastic. Sort of, it is a lovely family community, family of Bond. That's
absolutely
what we like.
Good stuff. Okie dokie. So we will return first thing in the morning for some more Spectre excitement. Until then, I've been Tom Sears.
I have been Chris Wright, but I just wanted to say that later on today, you'll find out the results of the poll of the most favourite Bond film. So we're going to send that out about, let me see, well, it'll be later on this afternoon, but we'll obviously let you know when it's out there. So really interesting read. Anyone that's sort of voted, obviously your vote will have counted. And we'll let you know what it is. So until tomorrow.
All right. We will see you then. Exciting stuff. Excellent. See you in the morning.
Ta-ra for now. Bye.